Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to start the session. But before that, you can collect, if you need any interpretation headphones, you can go back and collect it because Dr. Anusuya will be presenting in Portuguese. So I would request, if you want to take any translation interpretation, you can take the headphone from behind and return it after the session is over. We already have the three esteemed speakers, the chair of the session, Dr. Inauguration, Professor Gunter Pauly, and Mr. Matthew Barry. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause and let's welcome the three dignitaries here. And once again, if you need interpretation headphones, because Dr. Anusuya will be speaking in Portuguese, so you can get the English translation, the interpretation will be done through the headphone. Please collect the headphones at the back and then return it after the session is over. So welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. After a very fruitful inaugural session, we now come to the three important keynote addresses. Before we start, I would like to introduce the chair of this particular session, the Executive Director of ICO, Dr. Inauguration. She comes from a family of coffee producers and started her career at PwC Consulting, where she was a partner and worked for 15 years. She started working directly with coffee in 2002, always focusing on niche markets. She served as an executive director at BSCA from 2007 through April 2022 and took over as executive director at the International Coffee Organization in May 2022. Dr. Anusuya holds a PhD in Administration Marketing from Rosario National University in Argentina, a BS in Systems Engineering and Administration from Pontifical Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro, and MBAs and post-MBA focusing on management, marketing, and advanced project management from Fundação Getúlio Vargas in Rio de Janeiro. So please put your hands together and welcome Dr. Inauguration for the keynote address on global coffee perspective and future prospects.
Muito obrigada. Como o meu idioma é dos idiomas oficiais da Organização Internacional do Café, o meu idioma, certo? Eu prefiro e acho que é uma honra para mim hoje falar em português dentro desta sessão. I would like to ask again to the audience if they would like to understand that you speak in Portuguese. Then, if you would like to understand you are not able to understand Portuguese, please get your earphone out in the back of the stage. Thank you. Muito bem. Hoje nós vamos falar um pouquinho sobre as perspectivas que nós temos para o nosso setor. Mas eu gostaria de olhar um pouco, primeiramente, pelo retrovisor. Olhar um pouco o nosso passado. Nós começamos a falar sobre café, sobre consumo de café no século XIV. Tivemos uma série de iniciativas entre os séculos XIV e XVI. E em 1615 tivemos o primeiro embarque para o oeste da Europa. Em 1715, nós já tínhamos mais de 200 coffee shops em Londres. Então, isso nos mostra que, em muito pouco tempo, a nossa história como consumidores de café, como produtores de café para o consumo da bebida, ela é muito recente ainda, principalmente se comparamos com a história de consumo dos vinhos, mas ele cresceu muito rapidamente. Nós tivemos uma evolução do café aí então. Em 1720, eram industrializadas apenas 90 toneladas de café. Depois, quando nós chegamos no século passado, no século XX, nós já estávamos no início do século XX, nós já estávamos discutindo a questão de equilíbrio entre oferta e demanda, porque já estávamos tendo uma superprodução de café. Isto começou, então, mais de um século atrás. E nós temos, então, um mundo que vem se revolucionando muito, principalmente nesses últimos 60 anos, que são os 60 anos da OIC. Como já falamos mais cedo, estamos celebrando os 60 anos de OIC este ano. O gráfico que nós temos aqui nos mostra exatamente o crescimento das produções e principalmente o crescimento das exportações em cada uma das grandes regiões produtoras. Nós vemos América Latina, vemos África, vemos Ásia, que era praticamente inexistente, que é a linha amarela do gráfico, e vemos também todo o resto das Américas. Então, nós podemos ver como a produção e a exportação foi crescente e durante todo esse período nós vemos enfrentando as flutuações de preço. Uma flutuação de preço que está muito relacionada com a questão de oferta e demanda. Durante quase 30 anos, nós tivemos um mercado regulado. Foi o objetivo da criação, o principal objetivo da criação da Organização Internacional do Café. Então, até 1989, 1990, nós tivemos, então, este mercado mais regulado e depois, então, fomos para o livre mercado. Nesse momento, nós temos uma grande exposição dos produtores a esse nível livre mercado e também tivemos a Ásia, como eu já disse, despontando como um grande produtor e um grande exportador de café. Mas o café sempre foi e para nós sempre continuará sendo um driver de desenvolvimento. Hoje nós falamos de 25 milhões de pequenos produtores, dos quais 12 milhões têm no café a sua principal fonte de renda. E como eu já disse um pouco mais cedo, cerca de 70% do trabalho no café é realizado por mulheres. Então, é uma força de desenvolvimento, é um driver de desenvolvimento que nós precisamos entender e respeitar. Simultaneamente, desde 1992, nós estamos falando de um setor que trabalha com certificações de sustentabilidade. Isso não é novidade para o nosso setor. Nós não vamos nos adaptar a regras hoje estabelecidas. Isso é genuíno no nosso setor. Pensar no meio ambiente, pensar na responsabilidade social é algo que é genuíno dentro do setor de café. O que é novo para nós, a partir das regulações, é a maneira como temos que apresentar esses resultados. Mas não que isso seja novo, uma novidade para o nosso setor. Nós já fazemos isso e fazemos muito bem há muitos anos. E aqui, então, nós temos algo que eu considero muito interessante, que também envolve toda a questão do desenvolvimento de meio ambiente, da sustentabilidade ambiental. Nós estamos crescendo mais e mais o nível de produtividade com uma expansão mínima em termos de áreas de café dentro do mundo. É uma das principais razões pelas quais nós falamos, que o café hoje, ele praticamente não desmata no mundo. É apenas uma questão, cumprir com as novas legislações, vai ser uma questão de demonstrarmos que estamos cumprindo com elas. Estamos sempre preocupados com segurança alimentar, com a equidade de gênero, com a redução da imigração, assim como evitar o desmatamento, uma redução da emissão de gases e também o crescimento ou a melhoria de tudo que é biodiversidade e condições de solo. Essas são preocupações genuínas do nosso setor. E aí, o que vem para frente? Isso é algo que nós já fazemos há décadas. O que a gente vai estar vendo para frente? Nós temos que fazer as adaptações de estratégia para os câmbios climáticos, eles estão aí, e nós temos que ter muita atenção a tudo que diz respeito a mudanças climáticas. Nós temos que ter uma especial atenção à agricultura regenerativa para exatamente estar desenvolvendo cada vez mais a saúde dos nossos solos e a biodiversidade. E nós estamos, como OIC, trabalhando cada vez mais e mais com novos parceiros, buscando parcerias para que possamos trabalhar mais e melhor tudo que diz respeito à agricultura regenerativa, assim como a economia circular. Não podemos ter desperdício. Temos que buscar sermos uma economia zero desperdício enquanto setor, e esta é a nossa meta, esta é a meta do setor privado e também dos governos que estão envolvidos em todas as questões ligadas ao desperdício. Não podemos desperdiçar água, não podemos desperdiçar embalagens, não podemos desperdiçar a casca dos nossos cafés, porque afinal o que nós mais consumimos hoje é a sementinha torrada. Então nós temos que buscar utilidade para tudo o que diz respeito aos resíduos que hoje chamamos do nosso setor, para que tenhamos zero desperdício, zero resíduo dentro do setor. Essa é a nossa meta, e estaremos falando muito sobre esses dois temas, agricultura regenerativa e economia circular, dentro desta semana. Assim como temos que falar, como eu já disse um pouco antes, das novas formas de consumo. O mundo está consumindo cada vez mais café. Nunca se consumiu tanto café como se consome hoje, mas de formas muito diferentes, com populações muito diferentes. Os programas realizados com o apoio da própria OIC de promoção em países produtores, promoção de consumo em países produtores, têm trazido cada vez mais resultados, e nós temos aí toda uma Ásia para estar trabalhando, e com uma imensa oportunidade de trabalharmos novas possibilidades de consumo com os jovens e com novos métodos de consumo. Como o ministro mesmo colocou para a gente aqui hoje, uma forma tradicional de se consumir café aqui na Índia. E para realizar tudo isso, nós precisamos de quê? Nós precisamos de funding, nós precisamos de recursos financeiros que podem ser trazidos das mais diversas formas. Este é o último tópico com o qual nós estaremos trabalhando muito no decorrer desta semana. Para trabalhar e para estar trabalhando essas novas oportunidades, esses novos desafios, e nos desafiando e nos inspirando cada vez mais, nós temos aqui hoje dois fantásticos keynote speakers. Eu não vou usar todo o meu tempo, eu vou parar aqui, porque eu quero passar a palavra neste momento para o nosso principal idealizador de agricultura regenerativa, de economia circular, e o criador do termo a economia azul, que é o título do seu principal livro, que é um best-seller hoje no mundo. Então eu gostaria de convidar Gunther Pauli para conversar um pouco conosco. Muito obrigada.
Muito obrigado por sua palestra. But I will continue in English. How are you? Are you fine? That was a long opening session, huh? It was a bit boring for me, to be honest. A bit boring. You have to keep control over these matters. Anyway, protocol has been met. Welcome to all of you. Let me talk to you about coffee as an individual who's married to a Colombian lady. I'm a Belgian. My wife is Colombian, and I have learned the beauty of coffee through my wife. Let me start by going with a wisdom that does not apply anymore. If you give a man a fish, he will have food for the day. If you teach him how to fish, he will overfish. Ladies and gentlemen, the wisdom was that they will have food forever. That's over. Because if too many people fish, we are overfishing. And that's the reality of today. Ladies and gentlemen, the wisdom of the past does not apply always into the future. This is my coffee farm in Colombia, close to Chinchina, close to Manizales, el eje cafetero, como se dicen en Colombia. This is unfortunately the region where 52% of the children today suffer from malnutrition. How is it possible that this rich product called coffee, that brings so much passion to so many people, that the people who live in the region of the best coffee of the country, 52% of the children have malnutrition? That's why I got engaged in coffee. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a politician and not a diplomat. This was the company that I built in 1991 because I read a report in 1998 that there was going to be climate change. And because I was an entrepreneur and ethics is part of my way of working, I decided that my next factory I was going to build will be a zero emission factory. I decided in 89, and in 1992, I inaugurated the first zero emissions factory in the world. No waste, nothing. Self-sufficient in energy. My own wastewater treatment plant. And all my workers were paid to come to work on a bicycle. That's why we have a small parking place. 1992. So I received my invitation to come to UNCED in Rio de Janeiro in 92. Because I was the one who puts zero emission at the core of my business. And I competed against Procter & Gamble. I was making detergents. I competed against Unilever. I took 3% of the market without advertising. Because my advertising budget was this factory. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how business changes. By entrepreneurs who decided that the roof is going to be made with flowers and not with asbestos or amiant. I'm the author of the book, The Blue Economy, and we have a very simple and clear proposal. We need to think creatively into the future in a very different way. My work is to design new competitive business models. I'm not interested in research. Analysis creates paralysis. We're paralyzed because we have so much data and we do nothing or very little on the ground. But I want to celebrate the people who support me and show to you that I have mentors who have guided me in order to move forward. What I'm going to show you is very uncompromising, because as an entrepreneur, we do not need scientific proof. We need to believe we can manage the risk. Risk management is at the core. And therefore, what politicians don't do and researchers don't do, we take risks, put capital. And that is how I move forward. The green economy is where I have been working for 30 years. And I became very frustrated with the green economy. Because in the green economy, everything that is good for you and everything that is good for the environment is expensive. Who invented a green economy that is expensive? That means it's for the rich. Therefore, I designed the blue economy. The blue economy where we don't compete because we cut costs. We compete because we generate much more value. What makes the economy tick is the generation of value, not cutting the wages of the employees, not cutting corners on the environment. So we create more value than was thought possible. That's innovation. Here is an example of what we've done in Italy. Io sono il presidente di Novamont. Novamont è un'impresa italiana. We are the #1 bioplastics company of Europe. I'm the chairman. And when we look at bioplastics, which I hope you will all use in your packaging, instead of your aluminum together with your plastics and your paper, which is not recyclable, we decided to start producing bioplastics from cardoon, thistles. We use the flower and the juice and the oil from the flower, and the stem has cellulose, and with the sugar from the cellulose we make an alcohol. The oil we turn into an acid, and with an acid and an alcohol we make monomers. We do that in Italy. We are the largest producer of bioplastics today in Europe, but we know that the market is being faced with a lot of obstacles. We also make bio lubricants, we make elastomers, we make pesticides and herbicides, all from cardoon. But what is more, we are making this in Porto Torres, was the first large factory we built, and Porto Torres in Sardinia, and there we took over an old petrochemical facility to turn it into a biochemical facility, the first one in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to help petrochemistry to get out of the market with our old systems. And you can only do it if you create a new system. Here is the new facility in Porto Torres. What I think is very important is we need to give new life to what we have. And if you have old petrochemical facilities, turn it into biochemical facilities. In India, I worked in the tea business in Assam. I'm not going to mention you the company that I work with, but you can imagine. When the tea plantations that are over 100 years old in Assam had a loss of productivity, but a need to go green, the group decided to go organic. But if you have no carbon in your soil, your productivity drops immediately by 70%, because your plants are on chemicals. They can't grow anymore without the carbon in the soil. So the question is, how do you make the transition? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you a very simple solution that we partially implemented. In the back you see what we do with the trees that provided a shade. We all planted vines with pepper. The tea plantation is also a pepper plantation. But since there was a need to have irrigation because the monsoons became irregular, we created 26 retention ponds for water. And the retention ponds were put into the hills in Assam so that we could have gravity-fed irrigation without the need for energy. If you have 26 ponds, you can as well farm fish. We became large fish farmers in Assam. Tea plantation doing pepper and fish. because once the fish was harvested after 9 months, we could empty the bottom of the pond and get the free fertilizer from the fish. Doing that for 6 years, we elevated the carbon content in the soil from 0.7 to 2.6%. Ladies and gentlemen, we have productivity again. Thanks to what? Thanks to the retention ponds and the fish, and we increased nutrition in the region. That is sustainable development. And we have to go beyond the obvious. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a large project I've been involved in for 39 years in Colombia. This is where the rainforests were destroyed already 250 years ago by the Spanish colonizers. We decided, with my friend Paulo Lugari, we decided we're going to regenerate the rainforests, and we were told we're crazy. I like to be told that I'm crazy, because the crazy ones are the ones who change the world, because we don't let ourselves be detracted. Here you see the NASA pictures where the little forest was left over around the rivers, and then you see the pictures in red where we regenerated the rainforests. Ladies and gentlemen, the rainforest can be brought back. Your theme is regenerative agriculture. We need to regenerate the whole ecosystems. We were able to succeed in planting and regenerating biodiversity. This is Paulo Lugari, the hero of mine. And we started working on this by working very directly with the mycorrhizal fungi. This was 40 years ago the largest mycorrhizal fungi project in history, because we didn't know there was this symbiosis between the root of the plant and the mycorrhizal. We tapped the trees, the tropical pine trees, and we processed them in a local factory. Ladies and gentlemen, we were told we will never be competitive, because a local production was never going to compete against the international one. We've proved them wrong. We are today the sole supplier of colophon to the paint industry in Colombia, and all our cars and engines run on turpentine. Turpentine. Because if you have a forest with tropical pine trees, you produce turpentine. We also bring water back, because when you have rainforests, you get more rain. We have proven in the region to increase rainfall by 15%, thanks to the biodiverse rainforest regenerated. And every child in the region at the age of 6 receives a bicycle for free. We love to create traffic jams with bicycles. Now, when the children only drink water and they ride a bicycle, there is an amazing effect on the health. We had to close the local hospital for lack of patients. Did you hear me? This is real sustainable development. Let me now go to coffee and make you read this little text. How can we explain that one movie star earns more for the endorsement of one brand than all the farmers who supply the coffee he promotes? Ladies and gentlemen, this is unethical. I'm sorry. How is it possible we have degraded to the point that one person earns as much and even more than the farmers who supplied the coffee? And you know who it is. I'm not going to mention the name. And therefore we need to change the business model. This is why capitalism is at the brink of collapse, because we cannot afford these kind of excesses. I have all the numbers to support it. We did the research. So we need a radical change of the business model. And that is what I stand for. So I wrote a little book called Coffee Solutions. Coffee Solutions is not criticizing the companies that pay too much for an endorsement by a star. What we need is strategies to make a difference. And I look, for example, here in Santa Marta with the Kogis, the indigenous people, and I ask myself, how can we create real development with this incredible, beautiful red bean? And of course, 30 years ago, we started in Colombia by taking the waste of the farm, which is incredibly rich in fiber, because coffee is a hardwood. And since coffee is a hardwood, we can farm high value added mushrooms on coffee waste. Ladies and gentlemen, this mushroom is sold for $2,000 a kilo. We outcompete cocaine. Did you hear me? Because if you don't outcompete cocaine, how are you going to secure that the people don't fall into the trap of illegality? We have today 6,000 production units of mushrooms on coffee waste. And I ask myself, why is it not 12 million? How is it possible that the farmer doesn't know that la soca, the wood that you need to prune every 3 to 5 years, that is ideal for mushroom farming? It has to be a standard for you. Value generation makes the economy tick. And here is our project in Chipinge, in Zimbabwe. This is my daughter, I adopted her. Chido, when she explains to the women working on the coffee farm in Chipinge that they can take the waste of the farm, inoculate it with a mushroom that is a wild mushroom from the forest in Zimbabwe, within 2 weeks they have their first harvest. What do you think women do in Africa when they hear this? They get up, they sing, they dance, and they do it. What do the people do in these multinational corporations? They want a feasibility study. They want an audit. They want you to write a business plan. And 5 years later, they still haven't done anything. Ladies and gentlemen, food and nutrition is a critical issue in the Sustainable Development Goals. If the coffee is only doing drinks and not worried about the food of the people where the drinks are being made, you're missing the point. This is real social responsibility. I have gone to the point, I have 6 children. Every child of mine learns how to farm mushrooms and coffee. This is my 3-year-old son. His mom drinks coffee every morning, and we farm mushrooms at home. Live what you believe in. Now we have to go beyond fair trade and organic, because I have seen it on the ground in my 40 years of experience with coffee farming, that going organic and having fair trade doesn't get the majority out of poverty. So something is not good enough. I'm not saying fair trade is bad. I'm not saying organic is bad. I'm saying it's not good enough. And so between this incredibly beautiful cascara, husk, and the bean, and the end product, we typically consume only 0.2%. And the forgotten part is the red part, the cascara, the husk. Did you know that the husk of coffee has 10 times more antioxidants than goji berries? 10 times more. And why don't we use it? Because the industry has accepted to use chemicals that make it impossible to eat it. We have pushed the European Union for decades to permit cascara to become the superfood for the Western world and the poor, because it's for free. And we still haven't been able to convince the European Union to accept it as a novel food. But let me tell you a short story. The King of Belgium, Leopold II, in the 19th century was betting that cacao was going to be the most popular drink of Western Europe. The British were thinking it was tea. The French, the Italians, and the Austrians were going for coffee. And the Belgian king lost because coffee won. But he had invested in the Belgian Congo and was a tyrant exploiting the Africans, a tyrant. And he got stuck with an overharvest of cacao. He sat together with his friends in the palace and said, "What can I do with all this cacao?" And so the idea came up that they could mix it with some sugar and some milk and make chocolate. Belgium became a chocolate producer. But then the question was, who in the hell in the world is going to eat cacao? Because it was a drink. And he said, no worry. Anyone coming to the palace will get a coffee or a tea, and I will serve the chocolate next to it. That is how chocolate from Belgium became popular as it is today. I'm asking you the question, when are you going to make coffee a solid food? I have done the prototypes already. We have more than 10,000 consumer tests on the market. Solid coffee is a future that will make an enormous impact for the farmers. But the main message I want to leave you, and I'll conclude with that, is the coffee chemistry. Let me symbolically take off my jacket. Don't worry, it's only my jacket I'm taking off. And change jacket. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm putting on a jacket that includes 6% coffee. This jacket is made from recycled fishing nets, nylon 6, and when we recycle the fishing nets, we take waste coffee post-consumer, grind it 3 micron, and we blend it into the jacket. Why do we do that? Because this is functional textiles. Coffee, as we know from grandmother, absorbs odors as it was done in the refrigerator. We have the first factory in Taiwan, second factory will be in Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, this jacket, I can walk in the rain and the rain will go off, just like it does on the beans. No water sticks to a coffee bean. We use the chemical, physical properties of coffee to make chemicals. And those chemicals, ladies and gentlemen, can be sold at thousands of dollars. Why are you worried about the world market price? Why do you debate the price going up and down every day when you can put it into textiles and get $2,000 guaranteed for functional chemicals? This is the future, ladies and gentlemen. So you can drink your coffee, you can eat your coffee, you can take the waste of the coffee after the mushrooms and feed it to your chickens. You can wear the coffee, you can put it in the carpets, you can make insulation materials with it. Even paints can be made from coffee. And don't forget, please, ladies and gentlemen, that the beauty of caffeine is that nature designed caffeine as the best pesticide ever invented. When the coffee farmers tell me they have problems with mushrooms, fungus attacking, of course, because insects don't attack when there is caffeine around. The insect is not the problem. The plant already has the pesticide. It's the fungicide that didn't develop. Timberland is making the explicit program for shoes. Drink it, wear it. A shoe, when you take off your shoe, no smell from your feet comes out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the future. We ran this with Juan Valdez in Colombia. But the problem is that coffee farmers think they're in the coffee business and not in the garment business. I invite you to think different. Go where the cash is. Don't go where the history is. You need to create a future. And the future is in the chemistry. 50% of my time, ladies and gentlemen, I spent on writing fables for children. I have a fable, of course, on drink it, wear it. Tea and coffee about the pesticides. I, of course, explained that shiitake love caffeine and grow in it. The children know from hearing positive stories that there's a grand future. Funny enough, the only country in the world that has presented all my fables for children to all the children is China. 280 million children in China know that the caffeine is the pesticide. And the children in China, they are wearing already textiles with coffee. Ladies and gentlemen, if the coffee industry doesn't look beyond coffee and the drink, you're going to struggle with your future. And you will see what is happening to the farmers in Africa, where today only 50% of the coffee farms have survived. 50%. We need to create a future. And that future means a new business model. And that future also means inspiring children about a better future. Thank you so much.
Alô, alô. Muito obrigada, Gunther. Realmente muito inspirador. Eu quero começar a vestir café também. Agora eu gostaria de convidar o Matthew Berry, que é o responsável pela área de pesquisas para café dentro da Euromonitor, que é uma das minhas grandes referências desde o momento em que eu trabalhava com cafés especiais no Brasil. O Matthew vai contar um pouco para a gente, e daqui um pouco, não por coincidência, voltaremos à China com o Matthew para falar um pouco sobre tendências de mercado. Obrigada, Matthew, por vir e por aceitar o nosso convite.
Obrigado. First of all, I want to thank everyone for allowing me to be here today, the International Coffee Organization, Coffee Board of India. So my name is Matthew Berry, work for Euromonitor International. My topic today is the future of global coffee demand. Those who don't know Euromonitor, or EMI, we are global providers of strategic market intelligence, focusing on consumer goods, such as coffee. We're in 16 countries, including Chicago, where I work, and an office here in Bangalore. Channels our Indian operations. We have people on the ground in 100 countries researching industries like coffee. Now, before I begin, I want to make one quick note about measurements. So I know a lot of people here talk about bags, they talk about volumes. I will not be doing that. I'll be discussing consumption, so I'll be using total brewed volume, or coffee in liters. So as coffee is sold to the consumer, if they brewed it properly, how much liquid would result. I'll also be talking about retail values, which will be in US dollar terms. With that out of the way, let's begin. So there'll be 4 sections today. First is a short introduction, laying out my key themes. Then we'll look at short-term demand trends in developing markets, then developed ones, and then finally there'll be time, I don't think there'll be time for questions, but oh, thank you. And we'll look at the long-term view from 2040, what will global coffee demand look like in 2 decades. So let's begin. Now this map shows the next 5 years how fast coffee consumption will grow across the world. We start out with the red countries. These are countries that are seeing declining consumption. So very few of these, mostly mature markets in Europe, Italy, Austria, Norway, as well as Japan. Most developed countries, though, are light blue, indicating very slow consumption growth. North America, Western Europe, Australia. Then if we move into developing countries, the consumption growth becomes faster. We see South America, much of Africa, East Asia in moderate blues. And our fastest growth is occurring in the Gulf countries and right here in South Asia. Notice that India is among our fastest growing markets in the entire world. But what's growing is very different. Every region's approaching coffee very differently, and formats doing well in one region do very poorly in others. Look at instant, for example. A major component in Latin America and Asia, the biggest component in the Middle East, Africa, and declining in Europe and North America. Meanwhile, segments like pods and ready to drink are very important in North America and Europe, but virtually non-existent elsewhere. So we're talking about coffee consumption growth. Always remember, it looks very different in different places. Which brings me to my key trend today, which will be really outlining my entire presentation. Volume growth comes from developing countries. Value growth comes from developed ones. So let's start with those developing countries. Now, most global volume growth will be coming from developing countries, and most of that growth will come from basic formats of coffee. This is that same chart again, but this time without the colors, so it's a little easier to see. It outlines something very important. In the next 5 years, 87% of volume growth will come from developing countries. Notice Latin America is in the lead, followed by the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Now notice also that there's no region declining in consumption. Europe and North America are still increasing, just at a much slower rate. But we're talking about where are people drinking more coffee in the future, we're talking about developing countries. Now which ones specifically? So this is showing the top 10 growth markets in liquid consumption in the next 5 years. Notice something very interesting. It is producer countries that dominate this list, led by Brazil, of course, by a wide margin. But number 2 is India, followed by Indonesia and Ethiopia, showing how important these markets are becoming to consumption, not just production. Notice also the United States and Canada on there. That's partially because this is looking in liters, and Americans and Canadians drink very large cups of coffee. So that kind of influences the numbers here. Notice also Ukraine. That is because this is against a 2022 baseline, so that's recovery to pre-war levels, not absolute growth. So why is this growth faster in developing countries? 3 reasons. Less mature markets, faster population growth, and faster economic growth. If we look at our major developed markets, we notice that they're not really increasing in average consumption. The average person drinks as much coffee as they're ever likely to drink. They may consume coffee in other formats, maybe edible coffee, for example. They're not going to drink that much more. If we look across North America, Europe, Japan, they're all basically stable. Now, they're stable at different levels based on local consumption patterns. In Italy, for example, very small cups of coffee, so less liquid volume. In Canada, very large cups of coffee, therefore very large volumes. But the story is the same almost everywhere. The only exception are countries with major tea drinking markets. Ireland's the best example of this worldwide, although other places like Australia or the UK also show some tendencies of this. Meanwhile, look at this same chart using the same scale for developing countries. Notice even our bigger markets, Brazil, Colombia, places with a lot of coffee consumption still are growing quite rapidly. The average person in these places can still drink a lot more coffee. That's saying nothing of our smaller markets. Look at, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Mexico, a lot of room to go. And of course, at the bottom there, we notice India and China. About a third of the global population lives in one of those 2 places, and they drink almost no coffee on a per capita basis. Only about a couple liters on average per year, representing potentially a massive amount of future consumption if the industry can successfully reach out to those markets. And it's not only that people can't drink more coffee in developed markets, it's that there's not more people in developed markets. Look at population growth. On the right there, that's all our developed markets next 5 years. About 18 million people, half which will come in the United States, mostly in the form of immigration, and then half every other developed country together. Then look at the left at developing countries. That's a lot more people. That represents potentially a lot of consumption growth of coffee. Now, not all those countries are major coffee drinkers, right? Nigeria, Pakistan, not very large consumption. But a lot of those are, right? Ethiopia, Indonesia, the Philippines, that represents a lot of new coffee drinkers coming into the world. We also find that in developing countries, rising incomes lead to more consumption in a way that doesn't happen in wealthier markets. Take, for example, the Philippines. That orange line shows average coffee consumption growth every year, and that blue line shows GDP growth. Notice how close those lines are to each other, right? Almost every year we find GDP and coffee consumption in the Philippines follows nearly exactly, which means as Filipinos get more money, they buy larger amounts of coffee, and vice versa. Now you might say, well, that's obvious, right? That must be true everywhere. People have more money, they buy more coffee, right? But it's not. If you look at developed markets, there really isn't that correlation. This is showing Germany, the exact same statistics. Notice there's not really that strong correlation. Now what happens in places like Germany is people buy different coffee. They might buy a different brand, they might buy more expensive coffee, they might go to the coffee shop more instead of staying in the kitchen, but they don't drink more coffee. Which is important because global economic power is shifting toward the global south. In 1990, the G7 controlled 2/3 of the global economy. The countries that later become the BRICS were about 10%. By the mid-2030s, the BRICS will be larger than the G7 in power. And that means potentially a lot of future consumption growth, because most global economic growth takes place in countries where as the economy grows, so too does coffee consumption. So to show what this looks like, we'll look at India, for being our host nation, although I think India is typical in a lot of ways of developing markets. We see most growth only in a couple segments. We don't see things like capsules or ready to drink on here. They are present in the market, but very small. Most growth is going to instant. In fact, we see a very large share of growth goes to instant, as well as we have a dynamic coffee shop sector, powered by places with large urban middle classes, places like Bangalore, for example, as well as significant growth in standard ground, another basic, more inexpensive format. And now we turn to our developed countries. Now in developed countries, people don't drink more coffee. What they are doing is moving to more expensive formats of coffee. So we look at a segment like pods, which is an expensive segment of coffee. Sales are nearly entirely restricted to just wealthier markets. This is showing annual sales of global coffee pods across the world. And notice they really only take place in two regions, North America and Western Europe. Every other region together is just that small sliver on the bottom. Right, so we're talking about expensive formats. We're really only talking about developed markets for the foreseeable future. So if you look at the top countries in value growth, or where consumers are spending more on coffee, it's a very different list. There are some countries that are the same. The US is still there, Brazil is still there, but a lot of new people show up. We see Saudi Arabia, the United Kingdom, South Korea, which are not on that first list. Now, of course, what I'm sure everyone notices here is one country is far above the other ones, and that is China. That's one thing to notice. The other is that almost all that spending growth is coffee shop spending. It is not retail spending. A market like the US or Japan or Brazil has both. China really doesn't. It is almost entirely growth in coffee shops, and that's very important to keep in mind. So if we look at future spending growth, 59% of the growth in the next 5 years comes from either the United States or China. And that is because of the dominant role of the coffee shop in both places. This is showing coffee shop numbers in these two key markets. Now, the United States has about 30,000 coffee shops. It's currently the world's largest. It will lose that title to China next year. China started in 2017 with about 10,000 coffee shops. By 2027, it'll have just short of 60,000. That is a staggering rate of growth, something the world's never seen before and will never see again. China becomes the largest coffee shop market in the world by outlets next year and by spending roughly 2029. Now, this means something very important, though, about the Chinese market, is that they're not drinking just coffee. They're drinking coffee from a coffee shop, which often means a lot of additives, a lot of stuff that creates other ingredients that are not just coffee. It also means that that demand is very exposed to Chinese economic growth, right? Coffee shop spending, especially in a tea market like China, is not essential. You don't have to go out to Starbucks, right? Which means you only do that if you're in good economic situation. And the economic situation in China is changing, right? If you look at the span from 2000 to 2020, it was a miracle by any metric, right? Annual growth about 10% in incomes. And we see in the future, we're looking at maybe 3 to 4%. Still good, but nowhere near as miraculous as before. And that's with significant problems in the Chinese economy. We look at property prices, rising unemployment rates, declining foreign investment, potential geopolitical risk, particularly with the United States. And there's a lot of reason to be concerned about China. A lot of reasons to be excited. We should always have that excitement tempered with a sense of, I think, concern for a lot of the real risks in the market. Meanwhile, in North America, there's one word that summarizes the trend, That word is cold. Americans, especially young Americans, are getting really into cold coffee. Now, I live in Chicago. It gets very cold during the winter, but I can go any day in January outside, and the wind will be blowing, the snow will be falling, and I'll always see someone clutching a cold brew coffee as they fight through the snow, which is an amazing sight and shows how important it's becoming to the North American market. If we look at growth in retail, notice it is ready-to-drink formats that are number one. That's true almost nowhere else in the world. Pods are number two, but even pods are becoming cold quite rapidly. Keurig's new machine is called the Keurig Cold. It's designed to make cold products primarily to appeal to younger generations who drink coffee almost entirely cold. We also see these trends spread across the world in interesting ways. Now, this is showing if you web scrape the term cold brew from places that sell coffee online, how common that is across the world. Now, the United States has the most occurrences of this. Japan and South Korea also have a lot because they're very big e-commerce markets, and they drink a lot of cold coffee. There's some other interesting ones, though. Notice that especially some tea-drinking countries have a lot of instances of cold brew coffee. Look at the UK, for example. About the same size as France or Germany in population, but vastly more interest in cold brew coffee because the UK is a tea-drinking market. They don't have strong feelings about what coffee should be like the way, say, France does. Or look in South America. Brazil has a lot because Brazil is a huge market, but so does Chile. Chile is a very small country compared to Brazil and a tea-drinking country, and yet strong interest in cold brew coffee, showing how countries more receptive to these trends are those which do not have more well-established coffee markets. I would notice also that India is among those markets. We see a lot of interest in cold brew in India, most likely because India is, traditionally speaking, a tea-drinking country. So that was the next 5 years. Now let's look in a broader view. What does world coffee demand look like in the year 2040? I think three things will happen. First of all, continued shifts in demand patterns, like those I've already discussed. The second will be the influence of technology, what I will argue is the fourth wave of coffee. And the third is the emergence of new occasions for coffee, new ways of drinking and new formats of using coffee. Now, we do not officially project what 2040 looks like at EMI, but I've made some assumptions based on population growth and average consumption growth as to what the 10 key markets will be in 2040. And the list is pretty similar to what it is today. There are some interesting changes, though. The US remains number one, but this is only in liquid volume terms. In dry volumes and in cups, actually, Brazil's number one. In fact, Brazil is already number one in these terms. It passed the US up in 2014 in total dry volume sold to consumers. Notice Indonesia and Ethiopia rise significantly, showing those influence of developing markets, but many of our markets are still the ones that are big today. Germany's still there, Japan, the UK. But what changes is the relative balance of consumption. If we look at changes, most of our big markets right now are not going to grow that much. We see some exceptions in those that are either tea drinking or have large immigration rates. So if you look at South Korea, the UK, Australia, some growth is expected out of these places, but many of our markets aren't really changing, right? Japan, France, Russia, the US, Germany, they're not really going to grow in consumption. They'll be largely where they are today. Some will actually shrink, particularly Italy. Italy dealing with some very harsh demographic realities. The Italian population will shrink significantly by 2040, and that means a lot less consumption growth out of Italy. Then we look at our developing countries, very different picture. We could see doubling of consumption from places like Turkey, India, the Philippines, Indonesia. Others which will grow a lot but not necessarily double, be like Brazil, Colombia. Now I note here that China is pretty low. I think some of you might be surprised to see that. A couple things to keep in mind. One of which is those economic factors I already talked about. Second is the fact that that's, again, coffee shop growth. So it's not a lot of actual coffee, it's a lot of coffee beverages sold through coffee shops. And the third is the Chinese population shrinking, actually as badly as Italy's is. By 2040, China will lose about 70 million people. That's about the population of France. That's a lot of people to lose, and that's going to be a major negative driver on volumes. Meanwhile, technology will continue to develop, which I argue will usher in the fourth wave of coffee, which will be about speed, technology, and making good coffee available everywhere. Now, if we look at the chains of coffee that are growing, especially those aimed at younger people across the world, they have a lot of things in common. The most important of which is they're not places you go to hang out and spend time. If you think about traditional coffee shops, you go for coffee, yes. You also go to socialize, to work, to study, to be there as much as to drink the coffee. If you look at something like this is the coffee in Curitiba, Brazil. There's really nowhere to sit, right? It's designed for you to go in, you order your coffee, and then you leave. Often buying cold coffee or value-added coffee, but it's not a place to socialize. We see also a lot of the established chains moving in this direction. My local Starbucks actually took out its chairs 2 years ago because they want to focus on to-go orders. They don't want you sitting around and hanging out anymore. It is all about getting in, getting out, and leaving. And I think this will be the essence of the fourth wave, a coffee model based on speed, technology, and a less human sense of interaction. Which means in the long term, the coffee shop starts to look like vending machines. Because if the consumer does not value human interaction, labor costs rise, automation costs fall, what is stopping the coffee shop from becoming a vending machine? And the answer ultimately is very little. So we have things like on the right, this is a robotic, you could say vending machine, you could also say coffee shop in San Francisco. You go, you order your coffee on the phone or the touchscreen, the robotic arm gives you your drink, and then you go about your day. And that's where I think a lot of the industry is going in the long term. If you think about our overall lifestyles, this is where we're going, right? We do everything via screens. We work, we study, we socialize, we entertain ourselves. It's all through screens, especially younger generations, which means that they're going to expect their coffee through screens as well. At the same time, the industry is expanding its investment in things like delivery and drive-through. If you look at Starbucks' strategy in the United States, everything they're opening is to-go or drive-through optimized, right? They're not encouraging you to stick around. So the investment's going in that direction. And finally, there's interest in very customized drinks, very elaborate things often seen on social media, which really can't be done in person. To put it bluntly, they hold up a line. But if you're ordering online and picking up later, it's not so much a concern. And these are very valuable drinks to the industry, very profitable, so there's a strong interest in making these the focal points of a lot of these new cafes. Now that being said, of course, and a lot of you are going to be very, against that message, and you should be, right? There's something very sad about the idea of a world in which coffee is just something you grab and go and don't interact with people. If you look at every generation, we find there's always people who still want the human experience. This is a survey we do. We ask, do you prefer living in the real world or in online experiences? And every generation says the real world. But notice every generation agrees a little bit less. And Generation Z there, it's barely over half, which means the next generation probably will not agree. Generation Alpha will actually like living in virtual worlds. But that being said, that's still a lot of people who want to live in real life still. If I make it philosophical for a moment, coffee is more than about a way to get caffeine, it's more than about the taste. It's always been a place for social connection. And the world of 2040 is one that's going to be, I think, lacking of social connection. We'll be isolated, living through screens, and we'll need places to engage with other human beings. And I think that coffee can and should be one of those places. Now finally, I want to talk about how coffee might look different, how we might consume it in different formats and different times of the day that we do today. This is influenced by three things. One is trends from other drink categories, the second is sustainability, and the third is the growth of cold beverages. Now this is showing growth of energy drink sales on the left worldwide. If we look at beverages overall, not just coffee, we see a strong interest in functionality and energy specifically. That chart shows a very strong demand for energy across the world. But that chart on the right then shows concern. People are trying to drink less sugar. They're concerned about their health. So we have this situation where people want energy, but they're concerned about what they're putting in their bodies, which means two things for coffee. One is that they could be drinking more coffee instead of energy drinks, the source of energy. And two is that energy drinks are going to want to get healthier. They're going to want healthier ingredients. And what better natural source of caffeine is there than coffee? So we might see coffee emerge more as an ingredient in energy drinks. Or look at the alcohol space. One of the key trends in overall drinks is people drinking less alcohol, what's known as mindful drinking. This means both less alcohol, and when they do drink, they want to drink better alcohol, which again means several things for coffee. One of which is that if people don't go to bars as much, they might have more opportunities to go to coffee shops. The second is that if they're drinking better ingredients, they're going to want naturally sourced, flavorful ingredients in their alcohol. Things, again, like coffee. If you look at the success of the espresso martini in recent years, I think that shows this. People are looking for new things in their alcohol, and coffee can be one of those things. This thing I also want to talk about is the emergence of non-coffee coffees, or beanless coffee as the term is. What you see here is minus coffee, which is a drink which mimics the taste of coffee, which contains no actual coffee ingredients. There's several of these products on the market today, mostly North America and Europe. And they're based on the idea of plant-based meat, which is that they take a product and try to make it more sustainable by substituting all the ingredients. Now, in the case of coffee, I don't think this is going to work, because plant-based meat works because people think eating plants is better for them than eating meat. So they benefit from what's called the health halo. No one is going to switch from drinking coffee to this for health reasons, because it's one plant for another plant. And coffee is already a very healthy plant to consume. So I think these products are not really going to go anywhere long term. They're not something to worry about. But in the longer term, there's a more interesting threat, which is lab cultivation. This is, again, somewhere where the meat industry is already ahead. Lab cultivated chicken is now available in Singapore and the United States. It now can be done. And scientists in Finland claim they've done it for coffee as well. So if we're talking about 2040, there's a real possibility of significant amounts of coffee being grown in a lab, not involving the coffee plants at any point. Now, is this really a threat to the industry? And my argument would be no. If we look at consumer surveys, like on the right, we don't find interest in these products. People want things to be natural. We don't ask about coffee in our surveys. We do ask about chocolate and eggs. We find that about 1 in 5 consumers worldwide is intrigued by the idea of lab-cultivated chocolate. We can assume for coffee it's probably the same number. What's going to happen, though, is as we have supply issues, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot at this conference, lab cultivation will be a way to fill the gaps. It's not going to be anyone's first choice, but there's going to be supply chain disruptions, and there's going to be shortages, and this means there's a backup plan in place. So some consumers will be getting lab cultivated coffee, and they'll probably be happy about it, because the alternative will be no coffee at all. Finally, we have the continued emergence of cold trends. And what makes cold so interesting is that every time it seems to have become mature, it becomes something new. If you look at the US ready-to-drink segment, in the 1990s, it was all iced, highly sweetened drinks, like the Frappuccino. Then in about 2000 or so, we added a new segment, known as the energy hybrid segment. So things that were energy drinks, but also coffee. Then cold brew appeared, about 2016. Then we had nitro appear. And then we had what's called hard coffee, which is pre-mixed alcoholic coffee, appear. So notice that the growth rates never slow, because every time one segment slows down, a new one pops up. That's what makes cold so interesting. What I would keep an eye on especially is the emergence of more functional trends. There's a lot of interest in functional beverages, healthy, low sugar ones. I think coffee is going to do that. So I look at spaces like mental health, nootropics, as potentially huge growth areas for coffee in the next several decades. Now, a final note before we finish up here is that talking about trends are becoming harder to predict. This is true across all industries, not just coffee, because the influence of social media, and I would say TikTok specifically. People who spend a lot of time on screens find out about things. They become very popular for a couple weeks, maybe a month. Everyone tries it, and they forget all about it. Look at Dalgona coffee. This is showing Google search interest in the term over the span of 5 years. No one worldwide was interested until 1 week in 2020, when the whole world cared suddenly. And then a couple weeks later, again, they didn't care again. Look, it dropped almost nothing, and now it's back to where it was. There'll be more trends like this. It's going to become much more chaotic and unstable out there as social media becomes more important. Trends will go in and go out much faster. So we need to focus on the things that have long-term value rather than trying to chase every temporary trend, no matter how exciting they might seem. So it's hard to talk about the future, right? It's especially hard talking about 2 decades in the future. So what can we say for certainty about coffee in 2040? I will say 3 things with some certainty. 1, there will be a lot more demand than today. And of that demand, almost all of it will be coming from Asia, Africa, or Latin America. 2, technology is going to influence the industry in a significant way. I think especially by making producing, buying, and drinking coffee much faster, much more digital, much more personalized, but also maybe a bit less human than it is today. And I would further argue this will be the 4th wave of coffee. 3rd, we're going to drink coffee in very different ways than we do today, in new formats and at new times of the day. And this will be because of trends in sustainability, functionality, and from other drinks categories. Thank you, everyone. My name is Matthew Barry with Euromonitor. If you want to reach out afterwards, use my contact info, or stop and find me at the conference. Happy to chat. Thank you.
Be seated, yeah. Before we leave these speakers, I would request Dr. Vanusia Nogueira to kindly give mementos to our 2 esteemed speakers. Yeah. Dr. Venusia will give it to Professor Gunter Pauli first. Thank you very much, sir, for an excellent presentation, and thanks for keeping us engaged. I would request the doctor to kindly Doctor, I would now request you to give away the mementos to the other two gentlemen. To both of them. Thank you, Professor Gunter Pauli, economist from the Blue Economy. And also to Mr. Matthew Barry, Insight Manager, Food and Beverage, Euromonitor International. Thank you very much. And now I would request three of you to kindly come to the front so that our photographers will get a good pic of all three of you. It will be a memorable picture. Yeah. So those of you who forgot to clap earlier, you have a chance now. Yeah, please, 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 yes. One minute. Thank you very much. And with this, we come to the conclusion of today's proceedings. So see you all tomorrow in the morning. All of you have a great evening. Before we leave all of you, I would request our secretary for the concluding remarks for the day.
Dear all participants, I have a very important and a sensitive information to announce. I would like your attention. It's a very, very important information for tomorrow. Can I have your attention, please? I would also, please have your seat. Yeah. So, this event has been planned long back. We never expected any any problem to come in the event. We took all the care to have these dates. There is one small issue tomorrow regarding the logistics, what you are going to make from your hotel to here. There is a band, that is a general strike called by few private organizations tomorrow in the city of Bangalore. Since we are the organizers, we are very, very careful about the safety and security of all the participants here, including and more specifically the international delegates. So I, being a key organizer, I went and met the police authorities who are concerned with law and order in the city. So I had a detailed discussion. They have said that the band is called, but it's going to be a very, very peaceful band. There won't be there can't be even any chance of violence. That is ruled out. It will be very, very peaceful band. But the peaceful band, several associations have expressed support for that band, who are basic service providers. For example, transportation services, they have expressed support. Other services also express support because the issue is about farmers. So farmers, everyone has a heart for farmers. So whenever there is a farmers facing some problem, everybody likes to express support for them. What is that problem? I think that is beyond this conference. That's something not concerning to us. So these associations have expressed support, saying that we will also support and we will stop the services tomorrow. So many of the services will not be there, and normal life, though a person has his own vehicle, he wants to move to the place, he should not have any problem, you know. But since most of the services are withdrawn, the normal life will not continue as it is today. So we as an organizer, to be extra careful, we have taken certain measures which I am going to send it through mail to every registered delegate. But I would like to announce to you in person, since you are already there, would like to take few questions also if you have some questions. For all the international delegates, we know the hotels where you are staying. And I have the list which I am sending in my communication, that these list of hotels we know. And also I am sharing an email ID. In case the hotel where you are staying, it's not part of that list, you need to send a mail to me by 10 p.m. today. Once I know the list of hotels, the vehicle will arrive in that hotel. Morning pickup, I'm making a bus to each hotel. The vehicle will report at 7:30 a.m. in your hotel. And the vehicle will depart at 8 a.m. from the hotel to here. My request is, please have some early breakfast. Be ready by 7:30, 7:45 or at most 8 o'clock. Start the journey from 8. You may be here a bit early because our session starts at 9 o'clock. Still, I would request be here by 9 o'clock. Let us take you don't have session. I would request you to be here, spend time in exhibition, competition area. There are a lot of things are happening. Even if you have planned something to go somewhere, that will not be possible. After 9 a.m., the general life in the city will almost come to a standstill. I don't think it's safe. No violence will happen. I can tell you 100 times, but still as a precaution, I don't think you should go outside after 9. After 9, once you are here inside, there is a full police protection. Though it's a peaceful, we want to be very careful about the safety and security of the delegates. And this Bandh will be recalled by 6 p.m. in the evening. So same buses in which you came, that will drop you back to the hotel. And during the day, your stay is taken care here. We have arranged your lunch and everything, coffee, tea, lunch, everything. That's there for all the days, not only for tomorrow, but I'm just reiterating that everything is taken care. This is about international delegates. Coming to the national delegates who are coming, for you also the request will be, if you are traveling by your own vehicle or you have made some arrangement, you need to reach this place before 8 a.m. so that you can continue till the evening, and then day goes. Day after tomorrow, absolutely no problem. And tomorrow, there is no problem. We are going bit extra precautionary, extra careful. That's what I would like to say. There is no cause of concern. Let me repeat again. You're all safe. We will not take 0.01% of risk with regard to you. So this is the request. If you have some questions, I would like to take. If I am not clear somewhere. Yeah. Is there a mic, please? Handheld mic? Yeah, please. Sir, there. Yeah, I think it's audible. As if it's audible. No.
After 9 o'clock, public transport also will not be available, or it is available before 9?
Sir, in the information what I got was before 9, even if you are coming, you need to have your transportation already arranged. Because some of the services, including transportation, they have expressed support for this Bandh. So I don't think any transportation will be there. Public transportation, what happens, they also sometimes, if I say public transportation, the workers union, they have also expressed support for this Bandh. So even they may say that I will not be working tomorrow. So before 9, you need to have dialogue with your transport provider, or you have your own vehicle. Please come inside before that. But for all the hotels where international delegates are staying, we are arranging a bus by ourselves.
Can I have one question?
How about the like a private transportation service like Uber, Ola?
We heard that they have also expressed support.
Okay,
You need
thank
to
you.
cross-check. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
If there is a problem, please drop your hotel name. I'm going to arrange a vehicle at your place.
Thank you so much.
However, ladies and gentlemen, the life is going to be peaceful tomorrow. We are taking the utmost care. The very reason the secretary told all this thing is to make sure not even 0.01% of risk we take. Yeah, we're all at peace. So before 9, it's always better we get to the venue. And for foreign delegates, Sir told how we are supposed to be here. And for Indian delegates also, we would request you to be in the venue before 8:30. It gets a lot more safe.
Hi, I just wondered if we could use our delegate pass. We'll try and be here by 8. But if you could tell the transport and police authority that people driving in their own cars with the pass, if they show the pass, there should not be any problem. If that could be communicated to the traffic police, it would be useful.
No, ma'am, we had a detailed meeting with them. They are fully in supportive of it. They are ready to extend any kind of support to us. But we need to understand that it is not the police who are stopping you from moving. You know, police will never stop you. Police are saying that normal life should go on, will not allow anybody to disturb. Because they can't be there everywhere. Though nobody will do anything, there will be a road is closed because the people are protesting or something like that. You may not able to do. Nobody will stop you. Let me tell you, nobody will even ask you, why have you come outside? But if they are sitting dharna on the road, your vehicle is not able to move, then you are not able to move. So request is, till 8 o'clock, there is nothing. You can easily move to the venue. After that, you may feel some difficulty. Safety issue, there is nothing.
One more announcement. After this, you can head towards the delegate food court, and there is a coffee barometer. It will be another networking event, so don't forget to get the glimpse and the feel of the coffee barometer. Yeah.
Well, I would like just to express on behalf of all the international delegates our thank you for the support from the Indian government and the coffee board. We know that this is something that in the last minute can change, and it's totally out of control of the Hagadisha, Narendra, or all their team. And then I really would like to express our thank you on behalf of all the international delegations. Thank you, Hagadisha.
With this, we come to the day's deliberation. See you all tomorrow, and kindly follow the instructions. And as our secretary said, that we'll be totally positive and we'll have a great day tomorrow. Thank you very much. Go and enjoy the coffee barometer. Namaskara, and all of you, please take care.